All right, let's get right into it. We are talking about one of the most intense, world-changing moments in all of Irish history, the 1916 Easter Rising. You know, it was just 1 week that kicked off with this incredible act of defiance, ended in absolute ruin, and yet, somehow, it managed to forge a nation.
I mean, listen to that line. It just perfectly sets the tone, doesn't it? This isn't just some dry historical event we're talking about. It's a story of a city, a people, transformed by sudden, shocking violence. So the big question is, how did a seemingly normal Monday morning explode into a full-blown battle?
And that brings us to our first part, which we're calling the impossible dawn. Because really, for the average person on the street in Dublin, what was about to happen was completely and totally unthinkable.
So just try to picture it. It's Easter Monday, 1916. The streets of Dublin are just coming to life. You can hear the hum of the trams, the rattle of shop shutters going up. It's just a normal day, business as usual.
And then, bam, out of nowhere, marching right down the main thoroughfare are these men in green uniforms. These are the Irish volunteers, the Irish Citizen Army. Rifles on their shoulders, faces set like stone, and people just stop. They stare. They have no idea what is going on.
And this is where it gets really bold. This wasn't some backroom political deal. Nope. The rebel leader, Patrick Pearse, walks right up the steps of the General Post Office, the GPO, and reads the proclamation of the Irish Republic out loud for everyone to hear. It was pure, unfiltered defiance against what was then the most powerful empire on the planet.
Well, that act of defiance lit a match. And that brings us to the next part of our story, a city in flames. This is where that dream of a new republic smacks right into the brutal, harsh reality of war.
To understand the mindset inside the rebel headquarters, you just have to look at this quote from James Connolly, one of the key leaders. He's been badly wounded, can barely move, but his command is simple. It's absolute. Keep fighting. That tells you everything you need to know about their resolve, even as things got more and more desperate.
So what did this battle actually look like? Well, the British didn't hold back. They sailed a gunship, the Helga, right up the River Liffey and just started shelling the city center. The GPO, that rebel fortress, gets absolutely pounded by artillery. The rebels, meanwhile, are completely outgunned, fighting these vicious little battles from street to street. And the real tragedy? Ordinary people, civilians, are caught right in the middle of it all. The destruction was just immense. This one line really says it all. Ash falls like dark snow. Can you imagine? It gives you this apocalyptic picture of a city on fire, choked with smoke, a place that's becoming totally unrecognizable by the hour. So what are the people of Dublin thinking while all this is going on? Well, it was complicated. You had some people cursing the rebels, blaming them for destroying their city. You had others secretly, quietly, hoping they'd actually win. But for most folks, they were just huddled in their homes, praying to whatever god they had that they would just survive the night. And here's the thing you have to understand. The rebels knew they couldn't win. They absolutely knew it. From a purely military standpoint, this was a lost cause from the very beginning. But they weren't fighting for a military victory. They believed that a grand gesture, a sacrifice, that even a hopeless fight could be the one thing that actually changes the world. By the end of the week, that military reality becomes impossible to ignore. And this takes us to our third act, surrender and silence.
Okay, so after 6 straight days of brutal fighting, the situation is just completely dire. The rebels are trapped, totally surrounded by thousands of British soldiers. They're out of food, they're almost out of ammo, and they are just physically and mentally shattered. The GPO itself is just a smoldering ruin.
And this is the moment. Patrick Pearse, looking out at his burning city, seeing the bodies of innocent people in the streets, he makes an agonizing choice. To stop any more civilians from being killed, he gives the order to surrender, unconditionally. It's not a moment of weakness, it's a moment of heavy, profound responsibility. So, the guns fall silent, but the story? Oh, it is far from over. In fact, you could say the most important part is just getting started. The military defeat is about to transform into the story of martyrs for a nation. If the Rising was the spark, the British reaction was like pouring gasoline on it. They brought down the hammer, hard. Thousands of people, even suspected of being rebels, are arrested. They're paraded through the streets, humiliated. Many are thrown in prison camps without any trial. And then came the firing squads. At Kilmainham Jail, the leaders face their end, and the stories are just heart-wrenching.
Pierce went to his death still believing. Joseph Plunkett married his fiancée, Grace, right there in the jail's chapel just hours before he was executed. And James Connolly, he was so badly wounded from the fighting he couldn't even stand, so they tied him to a chair to shoot him.
This was the turning point. The British thought the executions would stamp out any idea of rebellion for good. They were so wrong. Public opinion turned on a dime. The scorn people felt for the rebels, it turned into white-hot anger at the British. And that anger turned into grief for the leaders. And that grief, it hardened into a nationwide resolve.
So this is the Great Transformation. These men, who were mocked just weeks earlier for failing, for ruining Dublin, they were now martyrs. They'd given everything for Ireland. And their sacrifice? It became the founding myth. It became the roadmap for a new nation.
And that brings us to our final section, where we connect all the dots from the ashes of 1916 straight to the birth of an independent country, from ruin, a republic.
You can literally draw a straight line from the events of that single week. The 1916 Rising provides the spark. By 1919, that spark has become a wildfire, the Irish War of Independence. And that war leads directly to the 1921 treaty that created the Irish Free State. A direct line.
And this really gets to the core paradox of the whole thing. Judged one way, the Rising was a complete and utter failure. Militarily, crushed. Dublin, a wreck. The leaders, all executed. But, judged another way, it was one of the most stunning successes in modern history. It inspired an entire generation, it completely flipped public opinion, and it created this powerful foundational story for a new Ireland.
So in the end, the Easter Rising was a fire. A terrible, destructive fire that burned down the heart of a city. But through those very flames, it lit up a path to a future that almost no one could have imagined just 1 week earlier.
And that leaves us with a pretty powerful question to think about. Is history just something that happens to you, something you inherit? Or is it something you have to reach out and grab, something you have to seize for yourself no matter what it costs? The rebels of 1916 clearly knew their answer. And because of what they believed, they changed the course of their nation forever.